Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of Southern Sorcery. We have a new segment that I am super pumped to roll out. This is our Top 10 Tuesday. We're going to discuss top 10, cards, and just like types of cards, whether it's creatures, just really anything, and then like phrases and magic. There's just a lot of exciting stuff we're going to go over, like top 10 stuff. So it's just going to be a fun little segment. Won't be long at all. These videos will be short and to the point, but we're excited to get your feedback on how our lists compare to yours. Without further ado, today we're going to be discussing creature types. We went broad strokes, so this is going to be top 10 creature types in the game of Magic. We did a point system. Daniel and I did two separate top 10 lists, then we compared those lists and had points, and then as they shared point values, that's what created our cumulative top 10 list. So without further ado, my friend Daniel, let's get into it.
All right. So again, we had no real guidelines. We just said like, here, go make a list. And we just said, okay, if he had any criteria in his head of like what made a creature type cool, I wasn't using that same scale unless it was like completely by accident. So that's kind of how we're doing this thing, is we're doing it kind of blind, which I think kind of makes it a little more fun and a little more random. So just kind of be aware of that. I think it was exciting. We do have some honorable mentions. Some of the creature categories and categories in general for these rundowns. Like he might have had one that was his fifth pick, and that didn't even crack my top 10. So we have a little honorable mentions kind of off to the side for those kinds of outliers. And so the first one is going to be Knights. This one was in Shane's top 10, but not in my top 10.
So I put Knights in as recent as, I guess, what was it, Commander Masters? When they redid one of the precons, it was a Knight precon. One of the commanders had the Eminence trigger for Knights. Yeah, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but they really just got revamped. And ever since then, that creature, I've seen so many Knights decks, and they've always been around. Knights have been printed for a long, long time, so there's a pretty deep pool to choose from. But that's why Knights made my list.
There's human knights, there are vampire knights, there's all like subsets. So it's interesting to be able to kind of pull from outside of the norm of you just thinking elves, goblins. Like, well, it can be a goblin
Yeah.
knight. It can be, so like it definitely gives you some different synergy maybe than like, oh, I've just got a goblins deck or I've just got an elves deck. Well, I've got this knights deck, and that kind of lets me pull because different
Yeah.
creatures want to do different things. Like,
Yeah.
vampires want to typically drain life and gain life, or like the and then elves want to, you got mana dorks and overrun, and there's certain characteristics that come with certain creature types. So having a knight as the creature type is interesting because you could go a bunch of different ways, I feel like, with knights.
Yeah, you see a lot of like equipment deck equipping your knights, which makes sense. Let me throw a sword to my knight.
Yeah.
That's like flavorful and on theme, but there's just a lot of like new triggers, like and powerful ones that are like specific, like buffs to knights, and that they've been around forever, like I said, and they've been across all like what you call like a hierarchy of like elf knights, human knights, whatever the case may be. But that pool being so deep now that they've got all these like just mechanical triggers that are specific for knights, you can really go deep with it and make a knight centric deck. So that was why, like, yeah, I mean, I guess that the creature type is kind of an ace, or whatever, like just a hodgepodge because it can pull from so many other things. But there are just knights too now too. Like there's not, it's just creature type knight. So it's interesting. Not I think I can't remember how high I had it on my list. It was pretty low.
Yeah, I think it was in the
I
last
think I
couple.
have, yeah, I had them in 9. But to me, they were just I don't know. Like anytime I played against those decks now, because the pool's so deep, like it's just mean. Like because
It's
you get
strong.
you
It's
get like
strong, yeah.
you get the elves, you get the goblins, you get vampires. There's human knights.
Oh
There's
yeah.
really all kinds of zombie knights. Like you get the kind of the best of like all of it a little bit. It's almost like allies
Yeah.
in a sense
Yeah, yeah.
too. Like the human allies. So that's why I chose it there. And our next honorable mention, which I did not have on my list, and that was a hard one for me not to put on my list, but dinosaurs. I think a lot of
Dinosaurs.
people are going to be mad. People are going to be mad at us. I think that's not on
It's an
our.
actual
I
top
didn't make the
10.
actual like top 10. Yeah, they're
There's
so
there was a
powerful and
good
they're so recent.
resurgence there from Lost Caverns with a new Pantlaza commander. I mean, some new dinosaurs
Yeah,
that came out there. So like they did have a resurgence. So up until that point, it was like if you had a dinosaur deck, it was like Ishath, and that was basically it. So now you've got a couple of
and
viable commanders now, but it's just so the flavor that, I mean, it's dinosaurs, man. They're just freaking cool.
dinosaurs.
They're
Yeah,
just cool.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and,
And
they're, and they're
there's
strong
there's
too. You have
yeah,
axolotl colors of
yeah.
dinosaurs. You got the new Galta. You got the new
I mean,
Atali.
they're
So
yeah. I think maybe I've just been so scorned with it because I've played so many against so many Gishat decks
sure.
or Zakama. You know that
But yeah,
both of
Sakama's the other
those
one.
and and it's always the same line. You know, it's always like dinos go they ramp real hard at the beginning and then they just like flood your board with dinos and then you just get stomped. And like to me, I'm like and it's not their fault. They're stomping like they're dinosaurs. It's on
That's what
theme
they
for what
do.
they're supposed
Yeah,
to do,
that's what they
right?
want
Yeah.
to do.
So yeah, and maybe that was my being scorned by being stomped to death by dinosaurs so much that I left them. They were in my rough draft for sure. Like I had dinos marked, and it was a very tough choice. I left them out actually at 4 vampires. Like it came down to like
Okay.
vampires and dinos for me for number 10, and amps. Spoiler alert, made my 10 list. But and I think that's just because of diversity, because there's so many ways to build vampire decks
True.
now.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. Dinosaurs are like you said. They're. I mean, even with Pantlaza, like the line is still essentially the same. Like, yeah, he can cheat out dinosaurs as like with Discover, but like
yeah,
you still just want a massive board of big old dinosaurs and to just stomp somebody. So
yeah.
yeah, there's not a lot of versatility
Yeah, it's not
in
their
the
fault. I
way.
don't
No,
want to
no, no.
yeah, dinos are gonna dino.
Yeah,
The same
yeah.
same concept for a lot of these creature types. Honestly, like
Well,
you'll
and
see, like making an elf deck is pretty like it's gonna elf ball, right? Like
pretty
but
much,
doesn't
pretty much.
no
Yeah.
knock on elves, but like that's just what it's gonna want to do. But dinos, yeah, that was a hard cut for me. Probably the
Yeah,
hardest
it
made actually.
was either my ninth or 10th as well. It was further down on the list, and honestly, like the cool factor is probably what put it into my top 10.
Totally
So yeah,
cool. Well, let's get into the actual top 10.
here we go. Buckle up.
Buckle up, baby. Let's go. We're gonna go through these. We will obviously say what our top 10 is, and then we'll just maybe talk about like why. And then if Daniel, if you want to, since we've got a cumulative list, if you want to tell them like where you had them on your list, and I'll tell them where I had them on my list as
Ooh,
well. That'd be kind of fun. Yeah. So at number 10, we've got Eldrazi.
noodle monster.
Spaghetti monsters. Yeah, absolutely. I had them. I had them at number 8, and I think it's recent biased because
Sure.
the MX3 precon stomps. I've played that precon out of the box. It does great. And then you take it back to Commander Masters again. Talking about that earlier, like they had a precon for that on top of the MX3 like new Eldrazi's that they dropped. To me, in the Eldrazi, have always been powerful, but like maybe not as like the top creature type. They're just kind of like you would throw like one or two Eldrazi in specific decks, not necessarily make an Eldrazi deck. But now very viable, very competitive to make just an outright Eldrazi deck. That's why I had them at 8, and I think that they're Eldrazi, man. Annihilator, like if they get going, it's like even if you can
Super
block them,
gross.
yeah. And like now they're like it's gone past Annihilator, like that used to be the main thing, but now there's like so many like mechanics and stuff.
Yeah,
They've
the
become
yeah
very
the spawn is a super viable way to build them now.
it's the spawn mechanics of take.
Hmm.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, did you have them on your list at all?
I did not have them in my top 10. It was kind of them or dinosaurs, and I just felt like we got the Jurassic Park cards, we got some other cool stuff, and truthfully, I have a dinosaur deck, and I don't have an Eldrazi deck, and that may very well be like the reason I went the way I did is just that like I've never actually
Yeah.
played an Eldrazi deck, played against Eldrazi
Oh
deck,
man.
and it sucks, and that may be part of the bias too, is that like I've never been the one annihilating people's things, and so like I've been
Yeah.
always the one having to sack my permanents, and I'm like, F these Eldrazi.
Yeah. I will say that, and it's funny you mentioned that because I have an Eldrazi deck, but not a dinosaur deck. So
Yeah,
maybe that is the
exactly. Yeah,
the
it could
thing here.
very easily be that. Well,
Yeah,
I just didn't
but I
have
will
dinosaur.
say, as far as cheating out creatures in just the game total, Eldrazi's are the best creatures to cheat out because nothing feels
Man.
better than like,
Oh, here's a
oh
12
man,
drop.
it's this
I'm
casual.
gonna take your turn.
Here's this casual Ulamog or Emrakul. I'm gonna take
Yeah,
your
I'm gonna
time.
take your turn. No big
So yeah,
deal.
it just feels good. That's one of those that I run where like I don't necessarily have to win the game to feel good. I can cheat out a couple Eldrazi, and that's good enough to like,
Yeah,
okay, I did the
you
thing.
did
I'm playing
something super
very
fun. We're
good.
able to do like some really nasty stuff, and then like somebody hit you on the crackback and said, "Nah."
Yeah, but it's
That's the way
fine
it
because I got to
goes.
cheat out
That's
on
the way it
Crosby.
goes. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
All right, so coming in at number 9, this is a pretty popular one. Zombies.
Zombie.
Zombie.
Okay, so
Yep.
for me,
Um,
zombies are super synergistic. The only real problem that zombies tend to have is that Will Helt's the only actual viable zombie legendary. The other zombie commanders that you see are going to be non-zombie creatures, but they care about zombies. So your Scarab God and
yeah, like Scarab God for sure. Yeah, Gisa and
Oh
Geralf,
yeah,
the
yeah,
brother and
yeah.
sister.
The brother and sister.
Yeah.
But they all kind of want to do the same thing. So the line is pretty straightforward. You want to make zombies. You want to sack zombies. You want to recur the zombies. You want to make other people sack
Mhm.
their stuff. You want to take their stuff out of their graveyards. It's a lot of interaction with
Yeah.
the graveyard. You want to move stuff in and out of the graveyard. But Jukabog is the
Yeah.
zombie's
Anything
worst
that.
enemy.
Yeah. Graph Digger's Cave. Like, there's so many
Yeah,
like
any
like
graveyard,
stuff
yeah,
in here.
any real
Yeah.
graveyard hate is
Yeah.
going to probably stop a zombie deck in its tracks. But the
Yeah.
good thing is most of the zombies are cheap, and even if your graveyard gets exiled, they all do that. They all want to do that. So like you're just going to put more stuff in the graveyard.
Yeah,
You're in blue
exactly.
black, so tons of mill. You can mill yourself easily. But yeah, there's a lot of synergy with zombies, and they're just cool. They're not as cool as they were, 10 years ago whenever Walking Dead was in its heyday, but zombies are still 28 days later.
I agree. And I think Will Helt he's just so well built out of the box. One of the best like precons out of the box I think ever made.
Oh yeah, it's got a
For
lot of
sure. And so
synergy.
that, yeah, like, yeah, right out of the box, you could really just kind of mess with the lands and really make it competitive. You don't have to do much with the deck itself. And then obviously if you want to make it spicy, you can. But it comes with a rooftop storm, so there's already a way
Yep.
to like really like make things go, bonkers and go infinite. And zombies are in the colors for a lot of
Uh-huh.
infinite like type stuff, like Demir blue black, like just kind of naturally has that those lines, so you could make a competitive zombie deck.
You
Maybe
could.
not CDH if it's like super zombie themed, but like definitely like a higher end EDH deck that
Oh,
can
for sure.
do some shenanigans. And
But
so
like I
yeah,
said,
like zombies are,
you
yeah.
can kind of take it different ways. I mean, like you can go mill, you can go recursion, you can go. I mean, you can flood the board, you can overrun. Like so, there's a lot of versatility there, and it's not like you have to really make a hard commitment to one or the other because, like I said, so many zombies want to do all those things. So like you could lean into mill and mill your opponents. You could like I said, you could rise to the dark realms and take everyone board wipe and then take everyone's stuff. You have access to those kinds of things as well. And then like, well, I just have all these decayed zombies. I've got 14 of them. Like I can take somebody. Okay, buff my team with coat of arms or something, and just demolish somebody. So there's a lot of ways to go with it.
Yep.
It's versatile.
All right, cool. So 8 is vampires. I don't know. Did we both have vampires? I know I had them
I
at
had
10.
vampires at 8 on my list.
Nice. There we go. We finally got our first. This is our first mutual top 10 creature type vampires. It's funny. I say in real life, in non-magic terms, I hate vampires. I don't like. Not a big fan of blood, and so the idea of like they drink blood like just super
It just
grosses
grosses
me
you
out.
out.
So I've never been. It does. It's disgusting, and I
Well, and you've got stuff like
so like
Twilight, where it's like I'm just so burned out on like these lame
you grew up, yeah.
vampires. Sure.
Yeah, but it's even before that. It was like I love Blade because like all that man did was kill vampires. So I was like, like this is my
Van
even though he was a vampire
Van
himself, like he
Helsing is your
like he
jam.
was. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like yeah, let's go. But in the game of Magic, one of my first EDH decks way back in the day when Innistrad first came out was Olivia of Aldarin. And I really like that mechanic of like stealing things. So it wasn't necessarily like a life gain or life loss like an aristocrat deck. It was more like just like stealing your stuff, turning other things into vampires. I thought that mechanic was cool because like just like other things, your blood gets sucked, you turn into
You
a
turn into
vampire,
one.
right?
Yeah,
Like
it's super flavorful.
yeah, so like I thought that flavor was like, yeah, that was really cool, it was on theme. But like vampires have been, I would say probably since Innistrad, since they really came out, like, and that was what 2012, I think, when that first block came out. That's when Commander really started kind of hitting the mainstream. Like so that they kind of hit at the right time to really have just like a long like legacy of like just different commander decks. And you've got Edgar Markov, one of the most
Yeah.
popular commander decks ever made, and that's like a true vampire, like just vampires
Yeah.
matter
Making
like
the
style deck.
token.
Or you could build an trap version of them. You could like go that route with
Yeah,
it,
it's
where it's
very
like
easy to
they
go
love life gain and
aristocrats.
life loss.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have the
But
other
yeah,
precon,
that's
the Streffen precon, and that is the blood token cheat out big
yep,
vampires. That's another good way to
yep,
go. So you could definitely go aristocrats. You could definitely go Olivia, where you are turning other stuff into vampires. You can go wide with Edgar, flood the board. So and then you've got the new one, which I haven't actually played yet. The one from Ixalan. So they got another visit there. It's
yeah,
and you have
yeah.
access to some colors there too. Black, white, red is the primary three for vampires, and I think that precon is all three colors. So you've got access to a lot of good cards. I put Welcoming Vampire in any white deck that needs some card draw that cares about tokens. Like there's a lot of good vampires out there. So Blood Artist.
There is, yeah.
Blood
Blood
Artist
artists
goes in a
like a
Kratz deck. There's multiple others that
yeah,
similar effect.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That was another thing I like to take into effect was like of these creature types, like how many can I just take and just like
That
just
slot,
splash in
yeah,
like a
just like,
creature
oh,
and
this
any
slot,
in it
like
in it.
if I have a deck in this color that does this thing, that vampire goes in it, even if it's out of the creature type, even if it's a typal deck. Like,
Yep.
Blood Artist still needs to be in it. Blood
Yeah.
Artist still needs to be in your
Yeah.
Will Hell deck. Like,
Yeah, exactly. So number 7 we have angels.
yeah,
Man.
Angels was number 9 on my list, but it was like number 4, I think. It was high for you.
Number 5 on my list. I had it pretty high just because another creature type that has been around for a long time, and it's just so angels are so powerful. Every once in a while they come around and they just like make this. They release an Avacyn, and you're like, oh my gosh, this creature is so busted. It's like it's an angel, of course, like it's an angel, so it like
Yeah.
automatically just like changes like this whole creature type. Like, oh my gosh, now I got to build this deck, and it's like there's just so many like Cigar. Like when they first did the first iteration of Gisela, Sigarda, Bruna, those all three of those angels and Avacyn, they all came out in like the same block. And Innistrad again, like just disgusting. All of them were just so good and so diverse. Even like Avacyn is like mono white, but then the others all had multiple colors,
Yeah,
and like Gisela is gonna
glorious, or
double. Yeah, and they're all like true to their colors too. It's like Bruno was blue white, so and it was all about like Voltron type stuff. Sigarda was all about like tokens with green white, and then Gisela white red was all about the attacks, and like all of those get played still today. I still see them all the time
yeah.
in people's decks.
Yeah, I think angels are pretty versatile on their own and like as a typal deck as well. But you know like you said, Sigarda like cares a lot about humans. There's a lot of interaction with humans, so it's like, oh, here's this guardian angel type thing.
Mhm.
You've got Atraxa, who is the number one commander of decks,
Mhm.
and she's an angel, even though she doesn't necessarily care about other angels. So angels kind of have that, and not a lot of other like kindred types really do, where it's like, hey, not only do we synergize with other angels, but like we also have built-in synergy with other creature types, sometimes very specifically, which is very flavorful to me. Like, here's this angel that cares about humans and like takes care of humans. Like, that's interesting. So tons of versatility
Yeah.
there with angels.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's why they made my list so high is because like I really thought about like how versatile they can be, and then how splashy they can be, and they
Mhm.
check both boxes like crazy. And like even like Sarah Angel, way back even in Alpha days, like that was such a powerhouse card. It was like, man, this Angel is just so busted. And it's just a 3/3 or whatever. But like the fact that like they fly is another thing
Yeah,
that's
that's what I
like
was gonna
always
say.
been
They have
like kind of
most of them
sneaky.
have built-in
Like
evasion. That's huge.
that was a ad for me. Cool. So after that, we've got another big one that we both had on our list. Been around for a long time. Merfolk.
I had it at 6 on my list, but it's
Actually,
it's one of
same.
my favorites. Like, as far as like if I had a pet type, it might be Merfolk. It's just
Yeah.
really fun to me.
I think when you get into like Commander specifically, and like a lot of people, the initial decks they build are always like hypal decks. Like they always like I don't know. It seems like to be a natural like easy way to like learn the game and build a deck, right? Because you can just be like, I love Merfolk, so I'm just gonna build this deck
Right.
full of my favorite Merfolk,
Yeah, it's an
and they
easy entry
naturally
point.
kind of
Yeah.
yeah, they naturally kind of help each other. So like, it's a fun like, way to kind of be introduced to the game. So like you meet a lot of people who've been playing for a lot of years. It's almost like what's your go-to creature type? So it's funny you said Merfolk, but yeah, Merfolk, an easy ad for me. They're one of the OG like, as far as like just being, a typal deck that's around there. They've been around for, gosh, forever. Like Lord of Atlantis, and again going way back to the early days of Magic, and
A
they've
century
just been
apart.
printed. Yeah, they still print, Merfolk in a lot of sets. Those kind of like make their way into like I said, just because they're so popular. So I feel like that it'd be hard pressed to see any top 10 lists, and probably here on out for our choices of any of these types that wouldn't make a list. I
Yeah.
think.
I was just thinking about, I have 3 Merfolk decks.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I remember one
Yeah.
of the first ones you built yourself was
The
the one that drew
Tashana,
the
yeah,
draw. Yeah, the
the
Tashana draw.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of a unique build. But then Ixalan brought us some really good Merfolk. Hackball is so
yeah,
disgusting, just does so much. The
okay,
value's
good.
there. I mean,
Yeah,
it's Simic. Merfolk
yeah,
are Simic, and those two colors together are just so strong. And
yeah.
I do think it's a good entry point, like you said. Like, it's fairly straightforward. The synergy's there. They're powerful. I mean, Simic good stuff. Like it's a thing for a reason. Like
Yeah.
it's those colors make it easy for
Yeah.
merfolk to be strong as well, because you've got the support
I
cards,
agree.
Ristic Study,
Yeah.
Kindred, Discovery, Kindred Summons, like
Yeah.
all kinds of. You've got the green
This
ramp spells. Like it's easy counter spells.
they're just popular. They
Yeah,
always will be too.
yeah. I mean,
And
who
they're
didn't
good.
love the Little Mermaid as a kid? Like,
Yeah. Everybody wants to see a mermaid when they're randomly out in the ocean or something.
yeah,
Like, hey,
I
that's
want to see
cool. They do exist. All right. So moving on from there, number 5, humans.
humans. I think, where did
Humans.
you have them
I
on
had
your
them.
list? You had them
I
a
had
little lower.
7 on my list.
7. I had them at
Yeah.
4.
Okay.
So I'll just explain myself here. The reason I have humans so high, I do tend to think that of all the creature types, they're the most boring just because they exist in the real world.
Mm.
So when you have things
Yeah.
like dragons and elves and Eldrazi and dinosaurs, in fact, the cool factor maybe isn't quite as there for humans. But the biggest thing for me about
Yeah.
humans is that if you look at how many cards exist for what kindred types, there's like 9,000 humans in
Oh,
Magic, and the next closest is like 3. So you talk about a creature type with versatility and being able to build it kind of however you want. Humans is the go-to. Like if you need a card that does something, there's probably a human somewhere that does the thing you need them to do.
For sure. Yeah. It's like you want to build a dryad deck. Well, there's human dryads. You want to build like you get super specific with it. You want
Oh,
to
you
build
can, yeah.
an archer deck.
Yes.
Like there's human
Rogue.
archers.
Yeah.
Like
There's
you just
all
want to be
kinds of
random with
stuff.
yeah, like absolutely yeah. Like that, talking about that, like it used to exclusively be human knights, and they
Yeah.
started coming out with other subtypes with knights. But yeah, humans like and King Kenny, like the biggest human of them all. You talk
Yep.
about being diverse, like he's one of the most diverse commanders because he does so many. He's like a Swiss Army knife on a commander essentially. He does so many things.
Yeah, that's the other. You can build them mono.
Yeah.
You can build them Wooburg. Like you can build them any combination in between.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings
Absolutely.
added a ton of good new humans in all
Yeah.
5 color. Like there's just such a
Yeah.
vast pool to choose from, and like with stuff like Lord of the Rings, humans are still cool. I want Aragorn as my humans, leader. Like
Yeah, sure.
like humans aren't duds, but like cool factor, the way that other stuff isn't quite there, but just the absolute
That's
versatility,
fantasy, right?
and you can build them casual and you can build them extremely competitive. Like there's so much there. It's just hard to deny them.
It's like when you play Dungeons and Dragons and you create your first character. Like humans, that's a race you can be, and it's like and they're good too. They have like like good bonuses. Like they make good characters for like whatever class you want to choose. But at the same time, it's like I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna like play this fantasy game and really immerse myself.
really
and
would
I
just
don't
say,
want to
I'm-
be.
I'm
I
a
don't want to
human.
be. I'm a human already. Like I want to
Yeah.
be something else. Like I
100%.
totally get like the vanilla. the
That's
boring
honestly
side
the
of that.
only
Like,
knock against humans. Truthfully,
Yeah.
is like the cool factor just isn't quite there the way that other stuff is.
Yeah.
When you have the
Exactly.
world of Magic, it's like humans are boring.
Well, speaking of cool factors, this next top 4, I think we almost had like identical in
Very
our
close,
list, and
very
they are
close.
these are some of my favorite creature types ever. And number 4 is just one of the silliest and best, I think, creature types in the game, and that's goblins. I love goblins. They are just so. I love the art. I love how like dumb and just like silly they are. Like the flavor text on a lot of like goblin cards. Like they steal my heart. I had them at number 4, and that's where they ended up
I had
landing.
them at 5. I had
At
humans
5.
at
Okay,
4.
so
I had humans
yeah.
at 4 and goblins at 5.
Okay, yeah, and Goblin's another one that's like they've been around since day one. Primarily, they live in red, but there are like other you can do. You could build a Rakdos. There's black red goblins out there as well. But yeah, I don't know. Like goblins are they're just fun. They're so just wild. They take off. Like you could build a deck. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like even in like other games out there too, like goblins, like Clash of Clans, like
Yeah.
Clash Royale, like all the noises they make. Yeah, I mean, one of the most powerful creatures in the game of Magic.
They're
Kiki
just
Jiki,
so fast.
Goblin.
Like if if aggro's your
They're so
thing,
fast.
goblins is your entry
Yeah,
point. And you got a lot of
absolutely.
viable
Yeah.
options for commanders. I mean, obviously you see a lot of the more competitive decks all
Rinko.
all tend to use Krinko. That's just because like
Yeah.
it's turn 3 and I've got like 12 creatures out. Like
16 goblins.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. If you can't stop a Krinko
I've
from
ramped
like
twice. I've got
yeah.
no blocks. Like what am I gonna do?
Yeah, yeah, I've seen Krinko decks absolutely, especially if like fast mana versions of Krinko, or they'll
Yeah,
drop
sure.
in mana crypts and moxes, like, or if they like Jeweled Lotus Krinko out turn
Oh,
1,
man.
you're just
Oh,
like,
my
I
God.
mean, I am in trouble right now. Like,
Yeah.
we're about to go infinite. They're about to get a Staff of Domination out, and it's
Yeah,
going to
and
be
then
like
just, well,
GG's. But
good game.
yeah, and that's the powerful side of it. But they're also like you can just be silly with them. Like you can
Sure.
make like just a all kinds of like land destruction if you want to be like weird with goblins and make like like land destruction. That's a possibility. Just be salty. Which coming from
Blood
goblins, I
goo.
don't think anyone would be too mad because it's
Nah.
like just funny. Goblins have just been around. There's super powerful goblins. There's flavorful goblins like Soul Warren Soul Trader.
That's it.
The new mono black goblin. Pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature, create a treasure token. Like
Yeah, pretty
how
good.
busted is that? That
Pretty
card's
good.
so good, so good. But yeah, they don't know. They've just got a lot of flavor. They've got a lot of like power, and just as a creature type as a whole, like they're always going to be around. There's always going to be new printings of them and stuff. So into the top three we go. Number three. Number three. This is what's funny is this top four is identical to my top four list. Number three is elves.
I also had a
That's
3.
that's personally probably my favorite creature type, even though I didn't rank them at number one. But like that's probably like just my favorite because that's like one of the first commanders I ever built was the original green Eladomri, the one that gives all those Shroud and Forest Walk. I have kept that deck together since 2011 when I built it, foiled it out. It's cost me a lot of money, it's like for certain elves to get foiled out, but I have a cradle in that deck that I actually play with the physical cradle, like so it's like my pet deck. That's my heart and soul when it comes to like my commander decks. And I just love elves. Elf ball. It just feels good to elf ball.
It
Like
does.
it's so fun to have.
When that
It's
comes
also fast
down
like
and
goblins.
nobody
That
counters it, it's just
that
like,
yeah,
yes.
it's just a sweet feeling. Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
similarly, Shane got me into playing Magic about a year and a half ago and did it via his mono green elves deck. So that was my first experience as well. So they are near and dear to my heart. I built a Lathril deck pretty early on as well. So Golgari Elves still wants to just elf ball. And there's just so many good elves. So the thing to me about
Sure.
elves is just their resilience. Really, it's like okay, cool, third board wipe, yeah, no problem. That's fine with me. Elves can come back. They're cheap. They multiply. They make tokens of themselves. Like there's just so many good elves. They ramp into themselves. They've got all the best mana dorks. They are resilient in that way, and so because of that's why I have them ranked as high as I do. They can outlast a lot of other creature types that two board wipes in, and like I've already thrown everything in the kitchen sink, and I've got nothing left. I've got nothing left to get where I need to go, and elves just don't care. They just keep on coming.
Keep on coming. Yeah. Yeah, and you alluded to it. Like, I think another thing that I love about them is just how many like mana dorks there are. It's so fun to run an elf deck and have a turn one. It just feels good to have a turn one like elf dork come out.
Oh, yeah.
Just play that
Yep.
that Arbor elf or play that Fiendlhorn elf or Llanowar elf or really any of
There's
them.
just
Like
so
you just
many
like
good
it just
ones.
feels good, and it just kind of accelerates the game from there. Like as far as producing mana, like there's no creature type that can do it as quickly
No.
as
Well,
elves can.
and as in
It's
mass
wild.
quantity. I mean, you've got
Yeah,
lords,
Priest of
you've got
Titania, like
Marwyn, yeah, Priest of Titan.
yeah,
So many ways. It's like, okay, well, this one cares how many creatures you have. It'll tap for that. Oh, well, this one cares about its own power, however strong it is. It taps for that. This one cares about how many whatever. I mean, and you just got so many good options, and then you start stacking them, right? So it's like, well, I've got Marwyn and Priest of Titania out, and I've got Wirewood Channeler. Like it's just like, oh, like how you've got, and I've got my guy's Cradle, and I've got a Nykthos out. So like, oh, I
yeah,
have 200 mana a turn, and it's just like now all you need is card
yeah.
draw, and
What?
green has a lot of good
You could
card draw. Like there's already tons of. I mean,
so much
you've
of it,
got
yeah.
Shamanic Revelation, you've got Guardian Project is great in any green deck. So every time you cast a creature, you're gonna draw a card. There's tons of other green creatures that
Beast
care.
Whisperers.
Beast Whisper, like so.
Yeah.
There's so much good card draw, and then you always have colorless artifacts and things of that nature as well at your disposal. So like it's not hard to keep your hand full, and everything is so low to the ground cost wise. Expensive elves are 4 drops. Like that's an
Yeah,
expensive elf. Like a 4 drop in a dragon's deck is like that's a cheaper dragon.
sure.
Elves they just keep on trucking, man.
They do. Yeah, they're resilient. Speaking of dragon,
A
number two.
segue.
Yeah, dragons. I love dragons. My Ur Dragon deck is probably my second favorite deck behind my elf deck, but I put them higher as a creature type just because of like it's aside from the mana dorks, it's rare that you see elves go in other decks, but there are plenty of dragons that you can put in other decks as just like one or two, like if you're not just building an outright dragon deck. they're
Yeah.
super powerful. They're historically just a part of the game. Like they, the elder dragons were like from legends and
Yeah.
stuff. Just there's always a dragon. I feel like in every set they always just like put a dragon. Like every plane has like that's the old ancient dragon that's been here for 1,000 generations. And
And
like the
speaking
card
of the
version
ancient
of it's like
dragons,
stupid, where it's like it makes 8 treasures when it comes into play. It's got ward 7. It does this. It's
man,
got
that
like every
Horde
dragon.
dragon from Lord
Dragons
of
are
the
just
Rings. So yeah, like you said, I mean,
yeah.
there's dragons in Lord of the Rings, but man, so good, and there's so many good dragons.
So yeah.
You do have to pay for them. They are a little more on the expensive side. I think another
Yes,
perk
absolutely.
is that they're in every color. You couldn't build a
Yep.
Wooburg elves deck. You couldn't build a Wooburg goblins deck. So you have a lot more versatility as far as colors go, which grants you access to all the best cards in all those colors. There's lots of great cards that can help you get where you need to go with dragons. You've got Urza's Incubator, and because dragons are in green, you've got access to all the best land ramp spells. Always have access to the soul rings and the signets and everything that you need to get there, and a lot of other dragon specific cost reductions, Dragon being one as well. So even if a dragon costs 7, you've got Urza's Incubator out, a Goblin Anarchomancer, and Dragon in the command zone. You're talking about 4 colorless less. Well, you're basically just paying pips at that point. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Dragon Lord Servant. There's
It
a lot
is,
of
yeah.
great ways, like repeatable reduction on those dragon costs.
Yeah, it's important. I talk about this in my Dragon deck that I did a while back. Very important when you're building a Wooburg Dragon deck. You can build whatever, but the Wooburg specific one with Dragon, I would say like focus on your mana base first because like they are expensive. There nothing feels quite as bad as having a grip full of awesome dragons, but just being like mana screwed to not be able to like actually do anything with it. So like put those reductions in there, put your rocks in there, make sure your mana is good, and then you can really slide in any dragons. Like there obviously is like power levels with dragons. There's some that are way more powerful than others. I mean, even vanilla dragons are still like 5/5s that fly and have first strike or
something
or trample, or they're just power. They always make dragons like very strong. Yeah, and some of my favorite cards they've done are the Baldur's Gate dragons, all the ancient dragons, the ancient gold dragon, the ancient silver dragon. Like I love the D20 mechanic behind them, but yeah, dragons they're just super powerful. A lot of people have dragon decks since our dragon has become a much more affordable card. You've seen that commander really just kind of like explode. Yeah,
people
everyone
just
has an
couldn't
dragon.
afford it
Yeah, which
before.
is
It
I love
was
it.
$100.
Yeah, it's like $100, $60. Like, yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, so it's just hard to like justify making a deck spend that much money on one. You just to get the commander. Yeah, there's a lot of dragons that are not cheap. The ancient copper dragon I think still sits around like 50 to 60. Yeah, there's other dragons. I mean, but there's ways. Like I said, dragons are so versatile in their power that like you don't have to run the S tier dragons. It's okay. You can still really like effectively win the game with like just your run of the mill like financially
just
cheaper dragons.
Damage,
so
just say yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, there's lots of really synergistic, affordable dragons. So it's not like you have to spend $1 million on your dragons deck.
No, which is what I did, but I built it over time.
Yeah,
love that deck.
and that's true too. You upgrade it as you go.
Yeah.
You upgrade it as you go.
Yeah, exactly. All right, the unanimous number 1. I would have a hard time arguing against this being on anyone's list at not being at number 1. I think they take number 1 almost by a landslide, and that's Slivers.
So good.
There's no creature type. You could say allies come close because they can do some similar stuff, but like I would even laugh at that because like Slivers, they're just like 3 Slivers on the board could almost be game over just because they're just that synergy, right? It's like you get the right 3 Slivers, all of a sudden like this sliver says make Slivers, this sliver's giving like card draw, this sliver's like reducing, giving you mana. Like there's literally any mechanic in the game. There's a sliver that gives other slivers that mechanic. It's like
and they all do.
There's no other creature type that has
and they're cheap.
Yeah, trample.
Oh, I'm gonna
poison,
play this one sliver, and that lets me tap my other slivers for mana. I'm gonna play this 1-drop sliver, and it's gonna give all of my other slivers flying. Like, my God, it's so gross.
Double strike. They have shroud. They have haste. They have flying. They have it's just literally any mechanic, any word soup you want to like spit out. There's a sliver that says other
this.
slivers have this, blah blah blah. Like they just
When slivers you
they're
control are,
just
are dealt damage, deal that much damage to a target. Like there's
much
just so much
yeah.
synergy, and they're
Yes.
so cheap. And again,
Yep.
they're Wooburg, so you have access to all the best
Yep.
support, all the best ramp, all the best removal. There's just
And you could almost interchange all the legendary slivers
you could
as
at any
good
point. The
feasible
first
commander.
sliver, the
You
sliver
could do Sliver
queen,
Overlord, first
overlord.
Sliver Queen. Yeah,
Yeah, even the new
all of
one.
them are like
They're all just
yeah, they
so grave mother,
yeah, and
so good.
what's really cool about that, and I love this, is like if you have a hard time choosing, they also go in the 99. Like
Yeah,
if you're not running
100%.
Sliver Queen
Yeah,
as your commander, she still slides in the deck. So it's
definitely.
like you can still have the best of like all the like you have all those commander, and then if you just want to switch them out, you can like this.
Yeah,
So I
and
would
you don't really
say
have to change the deck
honestly, the
very
only
much.
yeah, that's true. I would say the only knock against slivers, and this is because I'll say two things. I'll say two things. There's the first thing is you'll never run like just a random sliver in a deck. Like if you're gonna have slivers, it's gonna be
That's
a
true.
sliver deck, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
like
like you pretty much
yeah,
unless you're, I mean, maybe a changeling deck.
changeling, yeah, but then it's like why even if you're wanting to go the sliver route, just go the sliver route.
Very
Like who
true.
cares about
Yeah.
changelings? Yeah, and then the second one is generally everyone that's played Magic long enough, usually you become the arch enemy and you're gonna get hated out of the table pretty quick. So that's the only knock. Even then though, I've seen so many sliver decks, like our buddy Derek's, like you even knowing that like they're the arch enemy, like
It's
you don't
still
stop
can't
it.
stop
You get
it.
the right yeah, once it gets going, like it's just like I mean,
Yeah, if someone
you're
doesn't have
done.
spot
Like
removal or a
yeah,
board wipe by like turn 4, may
yeah,
very well have the game in hand. The other thing is they go
absolutely. Yeah,
infinite.
no,
They'll just go infinite. It's not. It's
yes,
not
they
even like.
can
Not only do they also
so many
give
ways.
each other so much stuff, but then it's like, well, I have intruder alarm out, so like I'll just pay 2 and make a thing, and then tap all my slivers. But they all tap for mana, so I'll tap all the mana. I'll float it. I'll make another 2/2. Oh, I'll float it. I have infinite mana, infinite card draw. Okay, you win.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
they all
and then
have
the rest of it.
haste. I can sacrifice them all and do damage to you guys. And that's the other thing is like you can go any route to win. You can aristocrats the table to death by sacking slivers. You can have slivers out that, you know, like when they're dealt damage, they deal that much damage. So like you cast a blasphemous act and just demolish everyone there. You can play out a ton of slivers, giving them double strike and menace and evasion and unblockable and shroud, and then it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to go to combat and no one can do anything about it. Oh, they all have indestructible, so board wipe doesn't matter. Like there's so many paths to victory with slivers that it's just
So many.
disgusting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and they're the best because of that. As far as creature types, in my opinion, go they're you know it's funny like you learn more about them in the lore. It's like they were genetically designed to be that way anyway, so it makes sense that they would be just so synergetic too. So
I think you're
but
right.
yeah,
Though. The
that's
biggest
our
knock against them is just like the reputation they have.
oh yeah, but that's our top 10 again. So at 10 we had Eldrazi, 9 were zombies, 8 vampires, 7 angels, 6 merfolk, 5 humans, 4 goblins, 3 elves, 2 dragons, and 1 the one and only slivers. I think that's a pretty solid list, Daniel. I'm
I
pretty
think it
happy
is.
with
I
it.
think it's good. I
Yeah,
enjoyed it. I
yeah.
enjoyed doing it.
Well, yeah, this will be an every Tuesday thing. I hope you enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments below what your top 10 is. Let us know where we missed or maybe like what we got right. We love hearing everybody's opinions. That's what makes the game great. There's so many creature types to choose from. I know we missed on some. I know that we're going to get a lot of grief, but I love the grief. I want to know what we missed on and what you guys think has to be in the top 10 in
Well,
a
there's
creature
only
type
10,
list.
so you can only put 10 in.
Yeah, only put 10. Don't put every creature type. Obviously we get it. There's 1,000 creature types to choose from, but
Sure.
like, let us know what your top 10 was. But very exciting stuff. I'm excited to roll this new series out, the top 10 Tuesdays. Looking forward to doing more of these with you guys as well.
Yep.
As always, we want to thank our patrons. Just you guys are the greatest. We've got a lot of box breaks coming up. If you're interested in getting into our box breaks, joining our Discord, having some live games with us, please join the Patreon. We have tons of cool new benefits for different levels at the Patreon level. So just check that out. We thanks to all of our subscribers. If you're not a subscriber and you're interested in our stuff, please like and subscribe. It goes a long way in helping us out. And we appreciate it. Thanks again for everything. And we'll see you on the next video. Bye.